All right, let's talk to Glenn in Ohio. Glenn, you're with Allworth Money Matters.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, glad you joined us.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to tell you I really appreciate your guys' podcast. I've probably been listening 3 years now and get a lot out of it.
Well, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. Especially like your banter between the two of you, so keep that up. But all right, so
Well, they don't enjoy it at home nearly as much. As my wife said to a friend the other day, don't encourage the behavior.
Your behavior?
Yes.
Yeah, well.
I get the same thing, so you're not alone on that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But anyhow, I actually, hopefully you're going to let me ask two questions, and they're both follow-ups to what you guys have given out as advice in the past. So just let me start off with one. I think it'll be a quick answer. And first of all, I'm widowed and then married again, and both my wife and I have children. I guess the term is spendthrift, but people, and it's really their spouse that we really don't want to give them the money in a full lump sum.
Yep.
So again, and I just listened. I actually was listening to your talk show a couple weeks ago, and you guys were talking to somebody, and you recommend a trust. But my problem is, and this is a different talk show, I heard that somebody said that trusts are taxed at a much higher rate. So if your trust is set up to hold that money for the 20 years that you want to distribute it, is it not true that money that when you first die and whatever you call that, when you first put it in there, it gets taxed at a much higher tax rate than what our kids would be taxed? Is that true or not?
Kind of. Do you want to explain what the difference between a revocable?
What you're like, a lot of us have living trusts set up, right? They're called irrevocable living trusts. We set them up for probate purposes. We can revoke
Revocable.
We can revoke them at any time. I changed my mind.
Excuse me. You said we have irrevocable trust.
I'm sorry.
It's revocable.
Twice I've misspoken today. Revocable living trusts. Many of us have revocable living trusts. We can change the beneficiaries anytime we want. We can take something out of that. We can dissolve the trust. It's revocable. We have power over it.
It stays in our estate. That's key.
It stays in our estate.
It stays in our estate.
Irrevocable trust is where we transfer some of our assets into a trust which we no longer have control over. And it's designed for two purposes. One, to get it out of our out of our estate. And secondly, and it depends on someone's estate. If someone's got a more modest estate, they may want to maintain some control, but the fact is it's still irrevocable. In an irrevocable trust, on any income that the trust earns, interest, dividends, capital gains, etc., the graduated tax rates occur really quickly, right? So for most of us, we don't get to the top tax brackets until $600,000-$700,000 or whatnot. With trust, it's something like 10 grand or 20 grand. It's very, you're pretty much taxed at the top tax rate from day one. That's for money. $16,000. That's for money that remains in the trust. If the trust pays out distributions to the beneficiaries, then there's no income that's left within the trust to be taxed at these punitive rates, and the income that was distributed to the beneficiaries is taxed based upon the beneficiary's tax structure.
So the answer to the question that you said is yes and no. It depends on how the income is distributed out of the trust. So So describe your situation, and we'll give you what we think is the best way to deal with it. So if you have a spendthrift child, you give them a lump sum, or their spouse, and you give them a lump sum.
They buy a Lamborghini,
right? And I've seen it. Not a Lamborghini, but a house on the beach. What are you trying to achieve? You want this money to.
What we were hoping to do for both of them is actually somehow create a 20-year payout of, again, if assuming it's going to be over 500,000, could be $1 million by the time we die. But in any case, each one we would just somehow pay that over 20 years. And and my understanding is, again, at least like you said, if the trust holds it, then it is taxed. That money that went in there and whatever it's holding on to the next year, they're taxed at. So somebody suggested if we put them, again, the trust and the trust directions or directives or whatever you call that are to create a 20-year annuity. Is that actually considered giving them the money?
No.
Not until you can set up a trust. So my assumption is this is what you want created upon your death. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. You could structure it, say, upon my death, I want 500,000, whatever the dollar amount is, to buy a 20-year commercial annuity to have these dollars paid out on a monthly basis, annual basis, over the next 20 years. That's clearly something you could do. And if you say, well, I don't want to have it 100% in fixed income, you could actually buy what's called a variable immediate annuity. It's quite complicated, but they when you have something like that, it invests in equities, and then the payout fluctuates each year based upon how the equities perform.
So they take a number of units, they purchase the units. Let's say they purchase 240 units. In that particular trust, they pay out 1 unit every month for the next 20 years.
And the units can be different.
And the units will fluctuate up and down based upon the underlying portfolio. If you were in my office, I would say you have that choice, or you can actually put restrictions in the trust. We can hire a third-party administrator who acts as a fiduciary. There's both a fiduciary and then an administrator of the trust. I would say for $500,000, I would just buy a commercial annuity, variable annuity, and I'd lay out a portfolio that was 60-40.
Because the administrative costs
will eat up a lot of the
And
return.
look, the reality is when you're no longer around to negotiate fees, right, and it's an irrevocable trust, you're not getting just my experience, like the fees aren't cheap typically.
Yes.
So to administer that, you've got to have, to your point, Pat, you have to have an administrator. You've got to file a tax return.
It's a lot of work. That's why if you buy an immediate annuity,
If you had $5 million, you'd say, "We'll set up the trust."
but by buying an immediate annuity, there's no tax returns because you've contractually turned that lump sum into a stream of payments. And the income would be paid by the beneficiaries.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Is that right, Scott?
All right.
I don't know what you meant by the income is paid to the.
Well, the principal isn't, there's no
Tax.
tax on that,
Correct.
but any of the income,
Any gain on that.
it would be paid by the beneficiary. The tax.
That's
would be.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Because it'd be their country. They're the annuitant on it.
Yeah, and you could write that into the trust.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's one of. Hopefully, this one is.
And how old
something
are you?
straightforward. How old am I?
Yeah.
I am 64.
Yeah. So odds are you're going to revise this trust before you die. And so
Most
the
likely, yes.
reason I'm stating that, don't let perfection get in the way of progress here, because what often happens, people doing estate planning, it starts getting complicated, and then because there's pros and cons to whatever decision you make, right? And then I've seen oftentimes they don't do the estate plan because it just ends up getting complicated, or maybe it causes some conflict in a marriage, and then people put it off. You're 64. Odds are you're going to revisit this 2 or 3 more times in your lifetime, if not more.
Okay.
So
Yep.
don't let perfection get in the way of the progress here.
And we do both have wills right now, which passes on in lump sum, and we're just thinking again, because both of us have that concern. Is there some better way to do that? And so I was just trying to determine that. And
Well,
I
and it's
think you
important.
guys-
Look, it's super important you've got something set up, because this isn't you have kids from previous marriages. So without this, you die, everything gets transferred to your wife. She dies, it goes to her kids.
With the exception of IRAs, which go to the named beneficiary.
Correct.
Or life insurance.
And
or
people
annuities.
get disinherited.